Okay, there will be 4 of these next segments coming here on the show, which is why you should like and subscribe if you have not already, because these are what we call new coach expectations. Now, Jake Dickert at Washington State is not technically speaking a new coach. Yada yada yada. He's coached games before. This is his first full season upcoming, so we're going to count him as a new coach. And I'll do Jake Dickert, Kalen DeBoer, Dan Lanning, and of course Lincoln Riley at USC. We'll be looking kind of general expectations, goals for the team, and the disappointment standard. So for Dickert, expectations, and this is not something you say a lot in Pullman, I think to be above 500. I think that's where Washington State fans are at. And after you hire an interim coach who goes 7-5 and then has a poor showing in a bowl game, you make these changes. They actually, in a weird way, this might sound a little bit out of left field, but they remind me in one sense of Kevin Durant going to the Warriors. Not because they've loaded up with super talent, but because by any measure, they had a successful 2021 season. Disappointing end with the bowl game, but by Washington State standards, they had a successful 2021 season. They were competing in the Pac-12 North with Oregon and Oregon State, and they were above 500. You go 7-5 in the regular season, that's a solid place to be. Doesn't mean that's the ceiling, right? We've seen kind of what the ceiling can be, which is 10, 11 wins that like Mike Leach got back in, I think it was 2016 or so, and they won the Alamo Bowl, 16, 17, something like that. But the reason they remind me of Golden State when they got Kevin Durant is they were good, but they made a move in the offseason that made quite a bit of noise because they wanted to get even better. And the reason that the expectation here for Washington State should be above 500 is you have a successful 2021 season and you send your 1.5 year starter and reigning freshman of the year, Jayden de Laura, out of the program, right? I mean, I don't know if they told him to go per se, but he leaves so that you can bring in a new offensive coordinator in Eric Morris and his quarterback who comes with him, Cam Ward, from the FCS level. That's the sort of move where you're thinking, I think we're good here. And if we ran it back, we'd be good again, but we think we can be even better with this guy. And that's what they're telling you, is they think they can be better with Cam Ward than they were with Jayden de Laura. That means if you're a Washington State fan, you should have an expectation at the very least that they are above 500. So it's the same sort of vibe. Like if the Warriors had not added Kevin Durant after the 73-win season, losing a 3-1 lead in the finals to LeBron, Kyrie, and the Cavs. Speaking of which, what a circus Kyrie Irving is. My goodness. Anyway, um, if they had run it back without Durant, they would have been a finals contender once again. But they wanted to get even better. So if you're making that move as Washington State, I think that's a reasonable expectation. You got to be over 500. Keep playing sneaky, solid defense like they did a season ago. They should be 2-1 through their non-conference games. They've got Idaho out of the Big Sky, an FCS opponent, and Colorado State. They'll probably lose at Wisconsin, but if you're 2-1 going into Pac-12 play, that's a good place to be. Tough to open with Oregon, but if you can get Cam Ward acclimated to the FBS level and start putting up some points, and that defense does what it did a season ago, then Washington State once again should be a pretty good team. I think their goal, and again, this is not a requirement from an expectation standpoint, but a goal would be to surpass last year's win total. If you win 8 games, including a bowl game, by the way, if you win 8 games at Washington State, I think that's a really good goal to have because then you're showing year over year growth. And I think that another goal that they should have is to beat Washington again. You're going to get them at home. And though I'm not as high on Washington as some of the betting markets are, or maybe some of their fans might be, at the very least, we can all agree Washington is not at their peak because at their peak, they're a college football playoff caliber program. And they are most definitely not going to be that in year one under Kalen DeBoer. You just beat them badly in Seattle. You now have them at home in Pullman. I think those are the 2 biggest goals for Washington State. Get to 8 or more wins, including the bowl game, and beat Washington at home. I think that's a really strong opportunity there for Jake Dickert to be able to beat Washington his first 2 seasons as the head coach for the Cougars. And then finally here, the disappointment standard, where we would look back and say that was a disappointing year for the Cougars. If you're under 500, I think that would be a little bit of a disappointment. I don't think 5-7 because you're in Pullman at Washington State. I don't think that's a disaster, but if you come out after, calling yourself the interviewing head coach and making the Cam Ward, Eric Morris move and, having Jayden de Laura leave the program, and there's some pretty reasonable expectations here, as I've been saying. If you come out and you win 3 or 4 games, that'd be a pretty big bummer for Cougar fans. And I mean, it wouldn't feel great. It wouldn't feel right. And it would feel like people would start to look around and go, wait, should we have hired Dickert? Was that the right move? I don't anticipate that happening, but if it does, that would be the mood around the Washington State football program. So goals: win 8 or more and beat Washington. Disappointment standard if you're under 500, but expectations, you got to be at 500 or better if you're Washington State, and I think you're moving in a good direction there. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and thank you again for helping get the show to 500 subscribers on YouTube. I will see you next time, and have a wonderful rest of your day.